Hello, everybody. I am here with the first ever episode of the TurianShepard Podcast, and I'm joined by a very special guest today. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Ruben, and I'm half of the studio named Aruma Studios. And we are right now working on a game called Intruder in Antiquonia, about a girl that is found lost and unconscious in a road, and she has to figure out her past and like solve puzzles. So yeah, it's me.
Yeah, so I was actually going to ask you if you could explain a bit about your game, so that was a good way to start, actually. Obviously, some people, if they've been sort of viewing my videos for a long time, will recognise you as well from Quantum Derail, which was one of the first indie point-and-click games I ever played on my YouTube channel. And it's how we sort of that's how we met as well, wasn't it? Through Twitter because of that game.
Yeah, indeed, it's a little bit shaming because if you remember correctly, you actually found a couple of bugs in the game. I may get to that later if you ask me about engines and so on, but I just happened to change the entire engine right before giving the game to you for testing, and
okay.
I forgot to remove all the bugs.
Yeah, that's right. I think I found a bug with the, if I remember right, it was the graffiti artist part of the game.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, indeed. It was the hint system of the game, and when I was testing, I tested like kind of the core game mechanics, and I forgot about the hint system, and it was all broken.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So in a way, that helped out then, me making the videos, which is pretty cool. So sort of bearing Quantum Derail in mind, how has the development of Intruder in Antiquonia differed from what you did with Quantum Derail? Because obviously, I think when we first started speaking, you were working for a company. I won't name it just in case you don't want me to say who it was. But now, obviously, you're working as sort of a game developer properly, aren't you? So how has that been different for you?
So it's actually very, very different. So one of the things that make a huge difference is the reason why we made those games. In the case of Quantum Derail, I don't know if you know the story, but it started as a assignment for a class. Like I did this course, or video game design, what's it called, specialization in Coursera, and one of the assignments was I had to make a prototype for a video game. So of course I love point-and-click adventures, and I decided to make that. It had to be a very short game, of course, because I had 1 week to put together everything. I did that. It was like a super ugly prototype, but it did the job. And then after that, my wife and I decided, why don't we turn this into an actual game that we release for people? And I said, okay, sure, but I need to improve the graphics a little bit. And so I took Blender and I started making the 3D graphics and so on. I mean, that was the reason, right? It started as an assignment that grew up. And in the case of Intruder in Antiquonia, it was completely different. We already conceived the game from the beginning as a commercial, full-length game that we would release in Steam. So yeah, that's one of the key differences, right? Another one is the people, because in Quantum Derail, it was just my wife and I doing everything. We did get a little bit of help from a friend of ours, Jorge, who made the logo and helped me a little bit with the backgrounds, like adding more details, making them more interesting. But yeah, it was us essentially. And Intruder in Antiquonia is different. We wanted it to be super high quality, and we planned from the beginning to hire professionals to help us and make like the best game we could afford with our savings. And then another one is time, of course, as you mentioned. Like we did Quantum Derail after work, like in the time we had between working for that company you didn't want to name, and our baby crying and asking for milk.
Right. Yeah.
But whereas Intruder in Antiquonia is a full-time job. Like I quit that company, and now this is what I'm doing, right? And my wife as well. One that is kind of similar is the engine, because for Quantum Derail I created my own engine from scratch. Like already for the prototype, it was like something super basic. It was just a bunch of web pages with very, very little JavaScript, because I had 1 week to put everything together, and like making the images was most of the work. So I couldn't spend too much time coding. But then when we decided to make it a full, like an actual game that we release, I rewrote the engine, and I created like a full-blown engine with animations and all of that. And then after releasing, I realized, oh, this engine is super ugly, and if I ever want to make another game, I cannot use this engine. So I rewrote it from scratch. And then before properly testing, I handed it over to you, and you found the bugs in the hint system. And Intruding in Antiquonia is very similar in that we still use our own engine, but I had to rewrite it once again, because Quantum Derail was for the web, and Intruder is not for the web, it's actually for PC.
Yep.
So I had to rewrite it again. And the last thing that makes them different is marketing, which I heard a podcast recently where you mentioned that you worked in marketing.
Yeah,
so
that's
you
correct.
probably will laugh at me for what I did in Quantum Derail, but in Quantum Derail I did absolutely no marketing at all. Like, I think the most marketing I did was talking to you to see if you could cover my game in your channel, and it did work out very well, because you have an audience that actually likes point-and-click adventures, and then that was great. But for Intruder, it was completely different. Like from the very beginning, even before writing the script, we did market research. We talked to people, tried to figure out what they like about games, what they don't like. Actually, I even talked to you, asking you about your personal opinion on point-and-click adventures and so on. And now we keep talking about it everywhere and trying to grow a Twitter audience and an email audience and so on.
Yeah, sure. And actually, that's one of the things that I remember when you first announced that is that we went through quite a lengthy sort of discussion as to sort of what I enjoy about point and click games and what resonates with me. And I think you spoke to some other people like the Grand Pufarian and people like that as well. So there was definitely a lot of market research that you did that I think perhaps people who will play the game won't realise necessarily went on. I'm sure they won't. But what I wanted to make sure is that we would make a video game that at least resonates with as many people as possible, or at least kind of the target audience that we are going for. Whereas in Quantum Derail, it was like, okay, I will make the game that I like, and that's it, right? And if nobody likes it instead for myself and 3 more people, that's fine. But in this case, that's not fine, because we want to put food on the table based on these games that we are going to be making. Yeah, of course. Yeah, now that it's a job, it's a more serious thing, isn't it? I think. So, what inspired you to actually start making games in the first place?
So I think when I was 6 years old, my father brought our first computer home. Like before that, I didn't even have consoles or anything. So that was my first exposure to anything that has CPUs or chips on it.
Yeah, okay.
And it was an Amstrad CPC.
Yeah.
464, like fairly old computer. And he used to bring a lot of video games for me to play. But he realized that after playing like 3 or 4 games, I was way more interested in figuring out how to make those games myself than actually play them. I think I still have games home, like in my parents' home, where that I have never played. Like they were there sitting, but I was busy doing something, so I didn't even have an interest in playing more games. I wanted to make them. So I would take the instructions book from the computer, because back then computers came with instruction books, and they have even snippets of code that you could paste, not paste, but you could just write yourself, right, and try to see what they do. And I would also buy computer magazines and find code in them and put it in the computer, see what it does, tweak it a little bit. And yeah, that's how it all started. I asked my father at some point, hey, this is something I actually can do in the future. Can I actually learn to do this better? And he said, yeah, actually, you can study like software engineering, and then you can go that path. And that's where it started, actually.
Wow, so it's something you've been doing from a very young age then. It's not really a thing that you got interested in later on and decided to get into sort of coding and game design and things. It's something you've always wanted to do.
Oh, no. It was, yeah, from the beginning. I have, well, this Amstrad computer it used tapes, not even floppy disks or
Yeah.
anything. I still have tapes with like games that I made when I was very, very young. Like, there were stupid games where it would ask you things and you would reply things. It didn't even have graphics. I didn't know how to make graphics back then, but I was already making games anyway.
Wow, okay, that's pretty impressive. So you've got games as well that you never even played as a kid.
Yeah.
All right, so what is it specifically about the adventure game genre that made you want to go down that path with this game then?
So I think it's very similar to most people, this nostalgia factor, right? In my case, in my specific case, it reminds me of part of my childhood where I was playing these adventure games with my father, right? And we would try to figure out how to solve the puzzles together. Like he would try to make progress a little bit, and then I would try to make progress a little bit, and sometimes we would get together and make progress together and try to solve the puzzles. And it felt great every time I could solve a puzzle myself, or even before my father could. So that was like, whoa, I'm smart, right?
Yeah.
And I actually remember that, and I have very fond memories of that time. And I think it was kind of a cooperative multiplayer genre for me, right? Because I would play with my father, and it also aligns with a way of dealing with problems. Like I'm the kind of person who, when I get a new problem that I have to solve, I don't like jumping right into it and start poking at the problem. I need my time to break it down in my head and try to figure out all the pieces and how to solve it. And adventure games give me that space, right, where I can stop and think, because my character is not going to die if I don't act quickly, right? So yeah, it aligns very well with the way my brain works, I think. And from a developer perspective, these are they are fundamentally narrative experiences. They are a little bit like movies in a sense.
Sure.
And for developers, they are actually very similar to movies. My wife and I used to work in filmmaking in the past, before we spent a little bit of time in Switzerland. And we were making like TV shows and movies and CGI movies, and making adventure games is very, very similar when it comes to organizing the work. It has pretty much the same steps, right? You have to make the script, and then you have to make storyboard, and then you have to find the locations, which in our case is designing the backgrounds and designing the characters and so on. So it is very similar, and that's very good, because my wife can do the production, which is what she was doing before in movies, and she has to learn a few new things.
Yeah, so in terms of like the puzzles and things, then is it quite difficult to design a puzzle without being the player, if that makes sense? Like, as in being the developer of the puzzle, is that quite difficult to find a balance between what's too easy and what's too difficult?
I think so. At least because we didn't release Intruder, I still don't know how I found the right balance or not. But in Quantum Derail, I remember I would design the puzzles in my head, and I would say, okay, I think this puzzle is hard, this puzzle is easy. And then when I see people playing those puzzles, like people like you and Poofy and Anna and all these people, I realized that some of the puzzles I thought were easy were actually harder, and some of the puzzles I thought were harder, like the other way around, right? So it's a little bit tricky. I think you probably get much better with time and with experience. But yeah, in the beginning it's very hard, because I think in many cases you use your own experience to solve those puzzles, and you think that the puzzle is easy just because you can connect all the dots in your head because of your experience, and other people might have different experiences, and they don't connect those dots right away, because maybe they don't remember some detail that you do remember. That's very important, to some detail from outside the game, right, from the real world, that makes it very easy to solve.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that I've noticed as well. If I watch other people on YouTube playing adventure games, everyone has a very different thought process. So I can imagine trying to design a puzzle that everyone will understand can actually be quite tricky.
Indeed. So what we are trying to do now is we are trying to make sure that there are hints in more than one place for each puzzle, so that if somebody forgets to look into these, they will look into that, and they will hopefully find the hints anyway. But until we start doing QA and beta testing and so on, we won't be sure that we are striking the right balance in difficulty.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I can imagine. So sticking with sort of point-and-click adventure games, I asked you this one on Twitter, and it was, what was your favourite ever point-and-click adventure game and why? But you said that you were struggling a little bit to narrow it down to one, so if you want to name more than one, then by all means, please do.
Yeah, can I create my own by mixing several together?
Yeah, if you want, yeah.
So if I could, what I would do is I would take the characters from Monkey Island, because I think they're beautifully developed, like Guybrush and Stan and Lichak and all of those. They're amazing, right? I remember all of them. I watch many movies that, like, a month after watching the movies, I don't even remember the characters. I think I will remember the characters of Monkey Island forever. I would take the story from Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis. I did love that story. Maybe I love that story because of all these element of magic and mysticism and so on that I actually like a lot. So maybe that's why. But I do remember most of the story, and I think it's super cool. And I would take the art from The Dig. And I know it's unfair because The Dig came much later and technology was way more advanced. So it was like easier to make beautiful pixel art with like more like richer palettes and so on. But still, I remember that art and I think it's gorgeous. And I noticed that these are all very old games, and there is a reason for that, and it's that when I was a kid I had plenty of time to play video games, and nowadays not so much because of the obligations and family and so on. So these days I tend to prefer shorter games, and if I have to name a couple, maybe I would say The Corruption Within. That was amazing, and it's short in a way that I can actually finish it in one go, and that's important to me because otherwise I might not finish it ever.
Yeah.
And I also remember Head of the Dog. It's this free game from Tall Story Games that was super fun and reminded me a lot of Monkey Island. Yeah.
Yeah,
those are my picks. Sorry, I rambled a lot.
No, not at all. It's good. No, the sort of classic ones you chose there are exactly the same for me, actually. So like the LucasArts stuff is what I grew up playing. So obviously some of those games I didn't play until I was a little bit older, and I started my YouTube channel. But yeah, sort of the Dig, Fate of Atlantis, the Monkey Island games are all absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah.
So, I mean, sort of outside of gaming, what sort of hobbies and interests do you have that you'd like to discuss?
So I have a couple, and that's a good thing because COVID was harsh on hobbies. So one of them is salsa dancing. I used to go dancing like once a week before COVID, like a couple of hours, which was great for my health.
Wow, okay.
And I like it a lot because, you know, I'm a software engineer, so I work a lot with this analytical part of my brain. And when I'm doing this, when I'm dancing salsa, it's like I can shut that part of the brain off completely and go with the intuitive part of the brain, which is amazing. It's like I'm relaxing and having fun at the same time. That's perfect. And when I was working on the company you didn't name, I spent about a year teaching my colleagues how to dance salsa as well, and that was super useful for me because I got a little bit more confident speaking in public. If it's hard to speak in public about something like software or stuff like that, imagine about salsa, which is completely outside of what people expect you would do in a software engineering company.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And another one I have that I hopefully can start doing very, very soon because, you know, salsa with COVID is not compatible. Yeah. It's bouldering. I also stopped that because of COVID, but I'm hoping to go back to it in a couple of weeks. And this one aligns very well with my way of solving problems, as I said, because when you're bouldering, you can take time to stop and think about all the rocks you have in front of you and think, okay, should I go with this one, that one? You can break the problem down. You can stop and think, right? That's the thing I like to do. and that's why I like bouldering a lot, and also it's good for my health as well.
Yeah, that's it. I was going to say that a lot of things which involve exercise, then, which is good too. Because I suppose if you're spending a lot of time sort of sat at a computer designing games, getting out and exercising and things is quite important.
Yeah. I mean, I spend 8 hours a day sitting in a chair. I need to do something that doesn't involve chairs or sofas or anything like that. Otherwise, yeah.
That's it. Yeah. So going back then to Intruder in Antiquonia, where are you up to at the moment with the development of the game? Because I think I don't want to say something that I shouldn't say, but haven't you got some news about something to do with the game coming up quite soon?
We are aiming for the first half of 2022, and hopefully first quarter, but we're not so sure about that yet because until the time is approaching a bit closer, it's hard to know what you don't know, and there is always things that you couldn't expect. And before we start to do a little bit of beta testing, we don't know how many issues we will have to resolve, and whether we will have to change some parts of the script, which would actually set us back quite a lot, right? So we are being careful there. Definitely first half of the year, but I'm not entirely sure if we will hit the first quarter yet.
Okay.
But yeah, so the script is done. Our writers, Anna and Marcos, did an amazing job there, and it has been done for quite a while. We did test it with a prototype from the very beginning. Like I always, while they were writing the script, I always had a fully working prototype with like placeholder graphics, of course, to test the script and see that it works and so on. So we are very confident with the script. The translations, they wrote the script in Spanish. We did translate it to English with the help of Carlos and Mira, and they are also done with that, and they did an amazing job. Like that really is brilliant. The inventory, Daria, our artist, did an amazing job as well. It's fully completed. I am personally also done with the custom engine and like overall programming of the game. Of course, there will be bugs. I will have to fix them later, right? Jen, she's our background artist, is very, very close to finishing all the backgrounds. I think she has 4 left. And then Rosenbel, she's our character artist, and I think she has 2 characters left from the entire game, so also very close to being done. I have to mention our art director, Diego, because all these people that we're working with are from all over the world. We have people from Mexico, Singapore, New York, and so on. So Diego, he's from Galicia, and our game is heavily inspired in this region in Galicia. So having the art director being from Galicia and being able to coordinate all these people to find this unique look and consistency, that has been super important to us. In terms of music, Juan is our musician, and he's starting to compose the soundtrack. We were already reviewing a couple of pieces. We were waiting quite a bit because he wanted to see most of the backgrounds finished to get a feel for the backgrounds and make music that would go very well with them.
Okay.
So now that we have almost all of them completed, he's starting to do the work, and he's doing an amazing job as well. And you probably already seen our logo is finished. Jorge is the same guy who did the logo for Quantum Derail. He also did the logo for Intruder.
Right, okay.
And he's also giving us a few tips in UI design and so on. Yeah, what's left now is finishing the art, finishing the music, start with QA, beta testing, and so on. And that's the part that can vary the moment where we can deliver the game. So that's why we cannot say with certainty that we will finish in Q1. So it will be between Q1 and Q2.
Okay, yeah, so it's quite close then, sort of progress on the game's going quite well. So I guess for people who are listening who aren't, because obviously I'm on the mailing list and I get the updates come through every week or two and get to see sort of screenshots and examples of the animation and all things like that. If people listening are interested, where should they go to get regular updates from you about the progress of the game?
So there are a couple of places. Probably the easiest one is Aruma Studios on Twitter because it's easier to spell. Otherwise, Intruder in Antiquonia altogether.com is the main website. But I know it's hard to spell. Antiquonia is not an easy word. So probably finding us on Twitter is much easier. We are also on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, So if you type Aruma Studios, you can find us everywhere. It's probably the easiest way.
Yeah, okay, perfect. And I'll also offer the YouTube version of this. I'll leave some links down in the description below so people can go down there and find things as well if they want to.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I guess you've been doing game development for a little while now, a couple of years. So what advice would you have for people who might be thinking about going into game development, but they're sort of a bit wary of taking that first step? Is there anything that you can recommend that could help them out?
So, I actually started with game development when I was like 7 or 8.
Yeah.
And the world was extremely different back then, right? There was no internet, not mobile, no indies, no Unity, Game Jam, Steam, and definitely no 10,000 games released per year.
Yeah, definitely.
So, I mean, most of the advice I could give my older self does not apply today. But something that I can say that I think stands the test of time is figuring out what are your goals. And the thing is, you're going to waste a lot of time chasing shiny things, right? Like the hottest genre of the moment. Like if a particular moment FPS is all the rage, you are going to try and make an FPS. If World of Warcraft is amazing, you are going to try and do an MMORPG. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah.
I think the most important thing is trying to figure out what you want to do, and for that, I think game jams is probably a very good idea, because you get to release many simple games, and then you test the waters, and then you understand what you're good at. You understand also what you like to do. It might not be the same thing that you're good at. And also what other people like to play, because if you release those game jam games, you will see how many people play each of them, right? Then between all that information, you might be able to start figuring out what you want to do. Because for me, at least, when I started, I wasn't really clear that I wanted to make adventure games at the beginning, and I actually tried a few things. My first game was not an adventure game. The first one I released was Xavier. That was kind of a puzzle game similar to Lemmings in a way.
Yeah.
And I made an adventure game, then I tried again a mobile game, like kind of real-time strategy a little bit. And I after doing all those things, I realized, no. Quantum Derail, that was the feeling. That's the moment where I was having fun making the game, and I could put many hours, and I didn't care about spending all those hours making the game, because it was super fun. And that's why me and my wife, we both decided to go this route and make also adventure games, because after testing the waters, we realized, this is what we like. This is what we like to do.
Yeah, I think there's definitely sort of something to be said for following your passions when you're trying to create something. It's something that I've noticed on YouTube as well, is a lot of people try to chase trends and jump around all over the place, trying to almost go viral. But I think, certainly from my point of view, the type of content I engage with is one where you can really tell the person that's creating something is having fun with it and enjoying the process.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, when I look at, for example, my last game, Star Balloon, I can tell from playing the game that the person who made the game, it's myself, right? But the person who made the game was not having fun making the game because, there is no passion there. There is no polish. There is nothing. And actually, when I was making the game, I didn't want to spend time polishing it, because it was boring.
So I suppose everything's a learning process, isn't it? You have to sort of go through those things to figure out what works for you.
Definitely, yeah.
So sort of in terms of game design, is there anything that's surprised you, would you say, since you started sort of making games and publishing them for other people to play online and things like that?
So one thing that did surprise me a little bit, but it's not so much from putting the games out there, but from learning from other developers who, like, sometimes they have blogs and so on where they speak about things. And something that I didn't realize about game design that surprised me a lot was environmental storytelling. So I made Quantum Derail, when I was designing the backgrounds, I would just put in stuff in the background that makes sense. Like, okay, I'm making this railway station. What should I have in a railway station? Okay, I should have this and that and so on. And now I realize that environments need to contribute to the story of the game, and you shouldn't just put things that make sense because it's a railway station, but you should put things there that help tell the story, right? And this is something I'm trying to change now with Intruder, and it's something that I didn't know until like very, very recently.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense actually. I can see what you mean. It's quite, it strikes me as quite a complex thing to actually build a world for a game to be set in. It seems like you really have to give a lot of thought to every single aspect of what's on the screen.
Yeah. And this is the reason that our script writers were a little bit involved also in environment design. Like, after writing the script for each of the scenes, they told us, okay, in this scene, it's very important that you have this item and this item and this item. You have freedom, of course, and our artists have freedom to design the environments as well, but those items should be there because those items are going to help tell the story. And also from there, I also try to find good references for the artists that set the mood that we want for that environment and help with the story a little bit. But yeah, having the writers involved in background design was kind of something weird that I wouldn't think about before making this game, but now I realize it was a very good idea, and I'm super happy that they helped us.
Yeah, and I mean, you can. Something that I've noticed as well, and I might be wrong, and correct me if I am wrong, but the developers, indie developers in particular, in the adventure game genre, from what I've seen on Twitter and things, it seems to be a very supportive community. So a lot of the developers look like they're helping each other and encouraging each other. I don't know if you feel that's the case.
Oh, definitely, yes. I noticed that like from day one, and I'm actually super happy that I'm in this genre precisely because of that. Like, every time any of us post an update about our game, everybody else is liking and retweeting and commenting and helping each other out. It's super cool, and I try to do it as much as I can, as much as time allows me, because I really want to encourage that behavior. It's just amazing.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, I would agree with that. I think just the community around sort of adventure games in general seems very friendly. I've seen a lot of sort of toxic communities on Twitter, but the adventure game genre itself seems to be just very sort of positive and encouraging, whether you're a YouTube video creator or a game designer or just a fan of the genre. Everyone seems to be very welcoming. And I must say, this is not just something that you do to show off. Like, if you could see my like private messages on Twitter, you would see that it's the same story there, right? Like, sometimes I get questions from other developers, and more often than not, I am asking questions to other developers because they have more experience than me on this genre. And it's always very friendly and helpful, and they are not afraid to share like details with me and information that would help me. That it's super cool. Yeah, that's really good to hear. So I guess we should move on to our final question then, because I told you it would be about half an hour and we're up to, I think, 34 minutes, so I don't want to keep you all day from doing what you've got to do. But I don't know, I mean, you will be aware of it, and it's something that I discussed with Olaf's Oss from the Grund podcast recently, is the Steam policy about refunds for games under 2 hours. I wondered if you had any views on that, because it's quite I imagine as a developer yourself, it's something that might concern you.
Yeah, so it definitely influences the kind of games that you can make if you want to be profitable, if you want to be sustainable. Our goal as a company is not to be super profitable in that we make tons of profit. We just want to be sustainable. We want to be able to keep doing this because it's fun as long as possible, right? And yeah, this policy limits the kind of games we can make. If we wanted to make a game that's going to be 2 hours of gameplay, that won't fly on Steam, right? We would have to either publish it somewhere else or make a longer game. So I am a little worried because I don't really know how long our game really is. I will know, of course, after beta test. I know how long does it take me to play it, but of course I know the puzzles and I beat it quite fast. But I don't really know how the average player is going, how much the average player is going to take. I will not know that soon. And it does worry me because if it turns out that the average player takes around 2 hours, we might need to make it longer somehow.
Yeah, so you would say you don't think it's a fair policy then for them to be in sort of encouraging?
As a game developer, definitely not. As a player, I understand that they also want to have a policy that is friendly to players, so that if you don't really enjoy a game, it takes you 2 hours to figure that out because it has a super long preamble or whatever. Sure, you need a way to say no. Sorry, this game wasn't for me. But I think 2 hours is quite a bit, and also maybe they could find another balance in which they take the length of the game into account when they compute what's the time after which you're okay with returning it, right?
Yeah, I think that sounds sensible. Yeah, I think the problem is with sort of indie games and things. There's so much work that goes in, and often it's a very small team. In your case, like yourself and your wife, and then you've got other people doing sort of animation parts and music parts and things like that. But all that work to go in over all those months, and then for somebody to turn around and go, well, it's a 2 hour game, so I'm getting a refund. To me, seems very unfair.
Yeah, definitely, it is. It is very unfair, especially if they play the game and enjoy it, and they just want to get their money back.
That's it. Yeah, take advantage of the system. Okay, then. So I guess I will let you go work on your game for the rest of the day. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me, Turian.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure. I will leave all the links for your game and your website and everything down in the description. So please, if anyone's listening, they want to check out more, please go follow these guys on Twitter and go on the website, sign up for the mailing list and everything. And yeah, let's hope that once we get are we going to get a trailer? Do you think?
Very soon, actually. I'm making a teaser trailer, not like the final trailer, but yeah, in the coming days I will release the teaser trailer.
Okay, yeah, it sounds awesome. Well, I'll have to maybe feature that in my Turian's Trailers series.
Cool. Thank you so much.
No worries. It's been good fun talking to you. Thank you for coming on.